The MTAR-21, the lost weapon of the Close Quarters DLC. But what's going on, guys, in the works? And yes, we are playing on some Close Quarters, and I figured there was no better stage to kind of test out and show off the power of the MTAR-21 than on Close Quarters, because this was the DLC that it came with, and really this is where this weapon tends to excel. But right out of the gate, a lot of you guys always get mad at me if I don't talk about my setups. So I'm going to get that out of the way so you guys can be like, oh, okay, that sounds like a pretty good setup that I want to try. But I'm using the laser sight and foregrip, and that's it. I mean, you can pick the optical attachment of your choice. It doesn't really matter if you want to go iron. Actually, no, don't go iron sights. The iron sights on this thing are absolutely horrible. But pick whatever optical attachment you want. It doesn't really matter. But really what makes this thing hum, in my opinion, is the laser sight. Now, a lot of people will be like, well, you can go with heavy barrel and foregrip, and you'll get the accuracy bonus, but that's not a big deal. When you're in close quarters like you're going to be with the MTAR, you want to be right up on top of them. And yes, close quarters has been out for this long, and we've still got level 100 colonels like this guy acting like a total douche, putting C4 over the flags. And that guy, I think, ends up going negative, so I guess he's got to do what he's got to do to get his kills. But back to the topic, the MTAR does require you to get in pretty close. Now, can you get people from further away? Absolutely. It's not like it's impossible, but I see this weapon as being the strongest when you're up in their face, when you're getting a lot of lead on target, because it shoots 900 rounds per minute. Now you're like, well, why the foregrip then? Well, I find that since it does have a lot of side-to-side movement, the foregrip kind of tames that a little bit. I feel like it pulls it back a little bit. It makes it easier to control in close quarters. It makes the hip fire to be a little bit easier to control as well. So, I mean, that's just personal preference. If you'd rather not take the accuracy penalty by putting foregrip on it, it's really up to you. This thing already has a really, really bad aim down sight accuracy, though, guys. That's one thing you need to consider. I think it's the highest out of all engineer weapons. It's around 0.5, so the spread on this thing is pretty bad when aiming down sight. Comparing it to the normal spread on engineer weapons, it's around 0.4, so it's a pretty big difference if you're going long range. But since we're using this up close, we're not really too concerned with spread, and that's why I tend to run foregrip. It's more advantageous in my eyes to tame the recoil a little bit than really worry about the spread, because like I said, you're up close. You're treating this a lot like the FAMAS. If you're a fan of the FAMAS, honestly, you'll probably be a fan of the MTAR. It's kind of like the engineer's version of the FAMAS. Granted, it shoots 100 rounds slower per minute. It only shoots 900 RPM to the FAMAS 1000 RPMs, which that is just absolutely insane. So this thing does get lead down target. Now, it has really, really good hip fire with the laser sight, and you can often beat AEKs because you can kind of pre-fire. You can start firing your weapon before you actually aim down sight, and then as you get on target, you can be more accurate. And you can usually take out AEKs in that department, but honestly, AEKs F2000s, they are going to be a problem at medium ranges when you're starting to drop off a little bit more, because they're going to compete with you in terms of rate of fire, but they're also going to be able to hold that damage a little bit longer. So I do run into problems with that. Even the M16 sometimes gives me problems at medium range, but up close, not much is going to beat you. This thing has a really good time to kill. In that respect, it's really awesome. But there are some downsides to the MTAR. The MTAR is a painfully slow reloading weapon, much like its counterpart, the FAMAS, or any other sort of bullpup weapon. This thing is not the fastest reload. It's 3.3 empty and 3 seconds if you've got one in the chamber, and that's pretty slow, especially for a close quarters weapon. So you will find me ducking behind cover to reload really quickly, and that's just the nature of a weapon like this. As you see me get killed 5 feet around a corner, I gotta love those Matrix bullets. But this is kind of one of those weapons that I see as one of those lost weapons of the DLCs. It comes out, and then people use it when it first comes out, and then they tend to start to migrate towards other things, going back towards the old weapons. And I noticed that a lot with some of the close quarters weapons. I mean, the MTAR, the SCAR-L, the AUG, all those weapons are awesome, and you do see a fair share of them from time to time, but I think if you compare it to the weapons that, the default vanilla weapons, you see those a lot more. So there are some, some lost weapons of the DLC that we tend to overlook. I mean, the LSAT, that is probably, in a lot of people's eyes, one of the worst LMGs in the game. Now, I see some value in the LSAT. It's actually an interesting weapon, but it's definitely not used very often. So there are some weapons in this Close Quarters DLC that kind of get overlooked. I mean, I've covered these weapons pretty thoroughly throughout the last 5 or 6 months, so there's really no new secrets here that I'm trying to discover, but I think the MTAR does have some value. I've tried using it on some of the larger maps, and I definitely start to see its weaknesses more on maps like this. I mean, this gameplay in particular probably is going to make this weapon look like it's absolutely just amazing, because You know, I was using it in the close quarters areas, and that's where this thing excels, and I get a lot of kills. I definitely lead this entire game in a KD spread, because let's face it, this thing is going to drop people really quickly. You go outside of that range though, you know, you take it onto like Firestorm, you take it onto even like, shoot, even Grand Bazaar. I mean, Grand Bazaar has some close quarters engagements, but it's got some long lines of sight. And I tried playing a rush game on Grand Bazaar with this, and it's just not the same. I mean, you run into a lot of the assault rifles that are just going to outgun you at different ranges. You know, when you go into maybe like, let's say you take it on one of those larger maps, I would definitely suggest taking off the laser sight, putting it on the heavy barrel, and using the foregrip heavy barrel combo. I think you'll do a lot better. Because you'll get a little accuracy bonus, and honestly that's what hurts this thing at those ranges. That's why you really can't compete with the assault rifles. But up close, nothing's really going to touch you. You're going to be pretty invincible, and I was pretty happy with this game. This is I think my third game of the day. I actually played this earlier today. I was like, all right, let's sit down, let's use the TAR-21, finally get a gameplay with it, and I ended up getting this little gem, which I will show you the final score, since a lot of people do like to see it. But I think this was like a 20-minute game, and I had to chop it up into about a 7-minute video. Hopefully I picked the best parts for you guys. But like I said, TAR-21's a fun weapon. On my channel, I like to push variety. I like to push you guys to try new things, give you some suggestions what works for me, what doesn't work for me. I mean, you may pick this weapon up and it doesn't fit your playstyle at all. I mean, that's to be expected. I totally understand that. A lot of people will watch these videos and they'll be like, oh, I don't like that setup, I don't like that weapon. And guys, you got to realize that if you play a little bit more stationary, maybe you don't move around a lot, maybe you're more of a long-range guy, you're going to hate the TAR-21. I mean, it's not really going to have anything to offer for you. It's a high fire rate, good hip fire, up in your face killer. So if that sounds good to you, try this baby out. I think you will be very, very satisfied with the results. But I think I ended up going like 74 and 15. I want to say, I can't really read that, it's too small, but pretty good game. And you know, this weapon is very usable. But if you missed my last videos, I actually did a Crysis 3 video late last night. I think a lot of you guys probably didn't see that. So if you're on the fence about the game, or you just want to know more about Crysis 3, definitely check that out. It's a pretty awesome game. Also, if you missed my last Battlefield 3 video, here it is. You can click on the screen, simple. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. I will see you next time. Peace.